In the coastal desert of southern Peru, etched into the surface of a vast plateau that stretches between the towns of Nazca and Palpa, lies one of the most extraordinary and inexplicable collections of ancient artwork ever discovered. Covering an area of approximately 450 square kilometers, hundreds of geometric lines, trapezoids, spirals, and figures have been scratched into the reddish-brown desert surface to reveal the pale yellow ground beneath. Some of the lines run perfectly straight for distances of up to 50 kilometers across the desert floor, crossing hills, valleys, and other terrain features without deviation. Others form enormous geometric shapes, triangles, rectangles, and spirals of extraordinary precision. And among them, drawn with a single unbroken line in many cases, are depictions of animals and plants of breathtaking scale: a hummingbird with a wingspan of 96 meters, a spider 46 meters long, a monkey with a spiraling tail stretching 93 meters across the desert floor, a condor with wings spanning 130 meters. These are the Nazca lines, and from the ground they are almost entirely invisible. You can only see them properly from the air. The lines were created by the Nazca culture, a pre-Columbian civilization that flourished in the coastal deserts of Peru between approximately 500 BCE and 500 CE. The method of construction was surprisingly straightforward. The Nazca people removed the dark reddish-brown iron oxide-coated pebbles that cover the desert surface and piled them to the sides, revealing the pale yellowish-gray ground beneath. The extreme dryness of the Nazca Plateau, combined with the almost complete absence of wind at ground level, has preserved these lines for over 2,000 years with minimal erosion. The construction itself required no advanced technology. Experimental archaeologists have demonstrated that small teams of workers using simple tools could have created the lines relatively quickly. What they could not explain is why. What purpose could possibly justify creating artwork of this scale that was essentially invisible to its creators standing at ground level? The first modern person to recognize the true scale of the Nazca lines was a Peruvian archaeologist named Toribio Mejia Zesp, who noticed the lines while hiking in the hills above the plateau in 1927. But it was a German mathematician and archaeologist named Maria Reich who dedicated her life to studying and preserving the lines, living in the desert for decades from the 1940s until her death in 1998. Reich mapped hundreds of the figures, protected the site from damage, and developed theories about their meaning that remain influential today. She believed the lines served as a giant astronomical calendar, with individual figures and lines pointing toward the rising and setting positions of the sun, moon, and stars at significant times of the year. This theory has been partially supported and partially challenged by subsequent research, but no definitive astronomical alignment has been found that satisfactorily explains the entire complex. The sheer variety and scale of what the Nazca people created is difficult to fully comprehend from a description alone. There are over 800 straight lines, 300 geometric figures, and 70 plant and animal designs. The animal figures in particular demonstrate an artistic sophistication that is astonishing given the scale at which they were working. The hummingbird, one of the most celebrated figures, is drawn with a single continuous line that captures the creature's distinctive long beak, rounded wings, and forked tail with remarkable accuracy. The spider figure has been identified as belonging to a genus called Rickenule, a rare arachnid found only in remote parts of the Amazon rainforest, raising the question of how the Nazca people in the coastal desert knew about a spider that lived hundreds of kilometers away in one of the most inaccessible environments on Earth. The astronaut figure, sometimes called the Owl Man, stands apart from the other designs. Unlike the fluid animal drawings, this figure appears to show a humanoid form with a round head, large eyes, and arms raised in a posture that some researchers have described as waving. The figure is carved into a hillside rather than the flat plateau surface, making it visible from the ground level of the surrounding desert. It is one of the most discussed and debated figures at Nazca, partly because of its ambiguous humanoid appearance and partly because of the theories it has inspired about its possible meaning. So why did the Nazca people create these enormous figures that they could not see from the ground? The most widely accepted explanation among archaeologists today holds that the Nazca lines were created for religious and ceremonial purposes connected to water and fertility. The Nazca Plateau is one of the driest places on Earth, and water was the most precious resource available to the civilization that lived there. Researchers have found evidence that many of the lines and figures are connected to underground water channels called puquios that the Nazca people built to bring groundwater to the surface for irrigation. Some of the lines appear to point toward sources of underground water or toward mountain peaks where rainfall and snowmelt originated. According to this theory, the lines were offerings to the gods or supernatural forces that the Nazca people believed controlled rainfall and water supply, created on a scale large enough to be visible to the divine beings they were intended to impress. A second theory suggests that the lines were used as processional routes for religious ceremonies, with groups of people walking the lines as part of ritual practices. This theory is supported by evidence that the lines are wide enough to walk along and that some of them lead to places of ceremonial significance. The act of walking a line that formed the shape of a hummingbird or a spider would have connected the participants to the spiritual qualities associated with those creatures in Nazca cosmology. Then there are the theories that conventional archaeology finds considerably less comfortable. The most famous unconventional theory was proposed by Swiss author Erich von Däniken in his 1968 book Chariots of the Gods, in which he argued that the Nazca lines were constructed as landing strips for extraterrestrial spacecraft. Von Däniken pointed to the straight lines as evidence of precision that primitive people could not have achieved without outside help, and suggested that the animal figures were created to be seen by beings flying overhead in aircraft or spacecraft. This theory has been comprehensively rejected by archaeologists, who have demonstrated repeatedly that the lines could have been constructed using simple tools and methods available to the Nazca people without any supernatural assistance. But the theory has proven extraordinarily persistent in popular culture, partly because it captures something genuine about the strangeness of the lines, the nagging sense that something this large, this precise, and this invisible from the ground must have had a purpose connected to viewing from above. What makes the Nazca lines truly haunting is not any single mysterious detail but the totality of what they represent. A civilization that existed 2,000 years ago, living in one of the harshest environments on Earth, chose to dedicate enormous collective effort to creating artwork on a scale that they themselves could never fully see or appreciate from any vantage point available to them. They drew a hummingbird the size of a city block. They drew a monkey with a spiral tail stretching the length of 10 football fields. They drew lines so straight and so long that modern surveyors using sophisticated equipment have been unable to improve on their accuracy. And they did all of this in a desert that would preserve their work for 2 millennia, as if they knew that someone, someday, would look down from above and see what they had made. We are that someone. And 2,000 years later, we still do not fully understand why they did it. Subscribe to Lost Chronicle, and every week we will take you deeper into the cases that history could not explain.